I saw a beam of light everywhere. And then the moment I saw those beam of light, I thought to myself, the rapture is here.
It's like in the corner of her eye, seeing like a little boy or like a little ghost going to one of the rooms.
It's a journey in the self too, because you find your intuition and discernment. But we got to realize that there's duality here.
Maybe 6 or 8 times over the course of a couple of years, I would wake up to this dark figure standing at the foot of my bed.
The green agenda is the obliteration of the human soul. They use children to do that. They can't do it without children. They need pure souls, and you cannot conduct a black mass without pure souls.
When you see that there's darkness, Satan exists, or that there's evil on earth, or that there's actually demons or whatever, I think it's a frequency when we're all together, really.
The light started like flicking off and on. So it was like a toddler, like a 5-year-old or 4-year-old.
At one point it started to gruff. I heard howls. I heard like this puffing sound, and I was petrified. I had no idea what it was.
Well, the demons are here, and they are going to steal the children.
To the show, everybody. You're listening to Apocalyptic Anomalies, where we shine light on the shadows to unlock all the secrets of our universe. I'm your host, Abner J. Valdés. If you have a crazy experience or story you want to share on the show, email me at apocalypticanomalies@gmail.com. That's apocalypticanomalies@gmail.com. Or you can hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. Either way works for me. Just get in contact with me. Today on the show, we have Larry. He comes on the show to share some Bigfoot encounters and experiences, and he also gets into some UFO experiences. So let's get into the show right now. Sit back and enjoy the show. Just having a little coffee on my end. Larry, welcome to Apocalyptic Anomalies. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. Glad to have you on the show. We were dealing with a bit of technical issues, but we got that resolved, so glad to have you on. Before we start the show, Larry, can you give the audience a brief bio about yourself, please?
Yeah, I grew up in North Carolina, and during the course of my professional career, I was transferred to Florida. And I was living in Orlando, Florida. And a friend of mine decided to canoe the Wekiva River. And the Wekiva flows from under the ground and out and goes southeast into the St. Johns River. It's about a 10-mile ride by canoe. But we were, and this is 1978, February 23rd, 1978, and I knew nothing about Bigfoot. I mean, I just didn't. I wasn't following it and didn't know about it. But anyway, we were canoeing down the Wekiva River. It was on a Sunday.
Hey, Larry, sorry to stop you. Can you adjust your camera just a little bit?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, like that. Perfect.
Yeah.
You can continue on what you were saying. Sorry about that.
So anyway, we were canoeing down the Wekiva. We started where the headwaters were, where it flowed from the ground, and it was about maybe 50 foot wide and an average of about 3 foot deep, and it was clear water. As it meandered through the swamp, of course, it collected the tea-colored water and became cloudy. But anyway, we were canoeing along, and I saw this giant cypress tree ahead, and I was telling my buddy Greg, I said, man, this tree's over 1,000 years old. And it was right on the bank of the river, you know. Part of it was in the river, and part of it was on the bank of the river. And so we started, slowed down the canoe, of course. It was canoeing around the tree to kind of get an idea how big it was. And as we scaled up the tree with our eyes, up about 30 feet, there was this, I took him to be a juvenile. He looked like a 10 or 12-year-old black boy. And really, there was, he looked like a human because he had a nose, but it was narrow at the top and came out a little bigger at the bottom. But he was, you could tell he was a juvenile. But anyway, he was standing inside the hollow of the cypress tree, and he was up to about his waist. And so I said, Greg, look at that. I can't believe that. There's a monkey up there. And so he didn't move a muscle. He actually he was camouflaged and we didn't see him. But of course he was right in broad daylight. He wasn't hiding. It was in the winter. And there was no leaves or limbs to hide him. But he didn't try to scurry down inside the trunk. He just stood very stoic. And his eyes would move with us, but his head moved very little. But he didn't say anything, and he didn't make any movements. And I had a 22 rifle in the canoe, and I said, Greg, I think I'm going to pop him between the eyes, and we'll drop him and take him back home and see what the locals think about him. He said, don't you shoot that ape. And, and I took a bead on him, and I was going to shoot him, but he was looking right at me. And I chickened out. I said, I can't shoot this guy. He's minding his own business, and he's not bothering us. And so I didn't shoot him. But it seemed to me like he had fear in his eyes, like maybe he knew what we were doing. I'm sure he didn't understand English, but anyway, I took the gun down and laid it back in the canoe, and we just watched him for maybe 15 minutes, and he stayed right there, very stoic, making no sound and making no movement. And so after we decided to paddle back and go back because it kind of shook up us a little bit in our day, and we decided to go back. But anyway, I told Greg, I said, what in the world is an ape doing here in this Wekiva wilderness area? Where we were at was on the left bank was a large wilderness area called Wekiva Wilderness, and it was no hunting, no trespassing in there. You couldn't go in there. We weren't supposed to anyway. But it was very swampy in there. A lot of water around, and so anyway, I'm glad I didn't shoot him or hurt him or anything because Mama was probably close by, and I don't think that 3 foot of water would have saved us. But anyway, when I got home, I called the zoo because I figured maybe he escaped from the zoo. And the curator, I got to talk to the curator, and he said, no, we didn't lose an ape. And I said, well, I saw one today down on the Wekiva River. And he said, yeah, we get reports from time to time, but they're not ours. We don't know anything about them, where they came from. And I said, well, this it really stumped me because nobody knew what it was, or where it came from, or how it got there. And so I really became interested in that, and I started doing some research and found out, that was a Bigfoot. And that movie had not too long. This is in '78, and I think that movie came out in '67 or '77 about the ape that the two ranchers found, and I can't think of the name of it. It was in Northern California. But anyway, it didn't look like that at all. It looked like a young Negro boy, and so it was interesting. He had dark eyes, and they were red. Instead of white people's, they were kind of reddish. And he was a handsome guy. Really, he had short cropped hair, and he was very stoic and all that. But anyway, when I got home, I called the zoo, and they couldn't, give me a good accounting of what it was, and I was really aggravated because I thought somebody ought to know what this guy's doing down here. And so I started doing some research on Bigfoot, and in my mind, I determined that must have been a juvenile Bigfoot. And this was in northern Florida, outside north of Orlando. It was kind of northeast of Orlando. But anyway, so as time went by and I did research, and I kind of forgot about it. But then I retired and I moved here to North Carolina. And one day I was out. I make bows and arrows for fun. I don't sell them. I give them away. But I make eastern woodland bows, and I make the arrows out of reeds. We have some beautiful reeds around here, just perfect for bows. Bowing arrow making really, but I had collected 12 and was tying them up with a grapevine when I happened to, I don't know what made me look over there, but I looked over about 30 yards. Just inside the wood line stood this real tall ape-like figure. And I said, well, I don't know how long, I think it was a she. I couldn't tell very well, the breast or anything, but I could see that, it was tall and lean. He wasn't a fat ape or anything. And I thought to myself, well, if she was going to kill me, she'd already done so by now because I didn't know she was there. So I was in a kind of a good mood that day, and so I waved at it like like you wave at a person, throwing your hand up like this and waving at it. And she didn't do anything. I could see a slight movement, but she didn't. She kind of had her head bent over, looking at me. And I said, "Well, maybe I'll call her over." So I did like this, motion for her to come over. I didn't speak. I didn't say anything. I just motioned for her to come over. Of course, she didn't, and I got to thinking, well, I'm going to get out of here because this is not a very comfortable situation. She's not reacting. I don't know if she's mad or going to kill me or whatever. So I didn't run, but I took a quick walk back and I had to go through a wooded area. It was rather swampy. And when I got about middle way, I could smell something stinking it smelled like carrion. But it was stronger, mustier or something. But I didn't see anything, and I looked all around in there to see if I could see what it was. But I think one of those Bigfoots might have shadowed me in the woods on the way back. I'm not sure. I didn't see him, and I didn't hear him. But I wasn't attacked or anything. I went on home. I told my wife about it, and I don't know if she believed me or not, but it was a true story. But anyway, after that, I ran into there was three apes, a dad, a mom, and a young ape, about, I would say, a teenager, and there was a male. But I didn't realize I'd run into him. But there's a greenway that runs from my house all the way down to the Neuse River, which is Smithfield Park there. And so when I was riding a bicycle, and I was about 3/4 of the way back, and I saw a hickory tree that I wanted to cut down to make a bow with, and I stopped the bike, and I started climbing the fence, and when I did, I heard this popping noise. It sounded like somebody was popping with their, like this, pop, 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 pop. And so I said, that's not a crow. First, I thought it was a crow, and I said, no, that's too strange. And I climbed up on top of the fence, and I jumped down to the bottom because the hill was a hillside, and the bottom part was lower than the top part. And I had laid down on the ground and looked through the fence. And this young ape was running, and it looked like he was skating because his head, he was real smooth with his graceful. I couldn't see below his knees, but I could see that he wasn't very tall, maybe 5 foot. But he was running, and he was running. I had never seen an ape run that fast. I mean, he was really quick. But he ran down the other side of the creek bank, and there was a clear cut area there with grass and weeds all in it, and he apparently was in there. Well, I don't know if his parents alerted him or what. I didn't hear the parents or anything, but he ran, and then he ran into the woods and up the hill. And I didn't go in there because I was afraid his mom and dad might be in that creek bank. And the bank is real high. You can stand in the creek and your head is barely, above the ground level. And I figured they were in there, and they told him to run. So I didn't go in there. But then later, one afternoon, I was up not too far from there. I was going through this old logging road. There used to be fields back there, and back maybe 100 years ago, when they planted those fields in the high ground with pines after they stopped farming. They were real tall pines. They were up 30 feet high. But anyway, I was going up this logging road, and it had a slight incline upward. And so when I got to the top, I heard somebody talking, and it was like, and I'd never heard that kind of language before, and I said, well, who is that? And are they talking to me? So I stopped, and I looked all around. I didn't see anybody, and the talking stopped. And apparently they were watching me, but I had a hickory walking stick that I carried with me for snakes and also for balance sometimes when you're jumping across stuff. But I hit that hickory. There was a oak tree there, and so I whacked on an oak tree 3 times. Well, at the time, I didn't know this, but 3 strikes means danger. And one strike most of the time is communication. And I don't know what 2 stands for, but I hit it 3 times real hard. And then I was standing there and I couldn't see nobody and I didn't hear nobody, and I started thinking, well, I'm not going to go past those guys. They were down in front of me, down in the vines and stuff along a little spring creek that runs through there. And so what I did is turned right and went directly away from them and made a big circle around and came back into the trail. When I came back into the trail, I looked up the hill and there stood all 3 of them just standing together and looking at me, And so I stopped and looked at them, and they stopped and looked at me. And I was probably 50, 60 yards away from them at that point. And so all of a sudden, the younger teenager guy jumps down on all 4s and comes running in my direction down the path. I said, "Oh hell, I better get out of here." So I didn't run because running is a bad thing to do for any animal, especially a predatory animal. So I just walked fast and I didn't look back, but I was listening. But I never heard him approach me. But all of a sudden, I felt sick and I felt disorientated. I didn't know where I was for a second or two there. I mean, maybe it was a minute or two, but I was really lost. I didn't know where the hell I was. And so it was an old foot trail there, and I stayed on that foot trail until I got out. I come out behind the Smith Hill High School. And I was thinking, there's nobody in the world going to believe that apes ran me out of here. I mean, people just don't think that. And so I was walking back, along the sidewalk, and I was thinking, who the hell is going to believe me? And I told my wife when I got home, and I don't think she believed me. She thought I lost my mind, I guess. But it's a true story. It really happened. And I saw them again. I didn't actually see them. They were coming up. I have a feeding station behind my house. I feed corn to the deer and apples and any kind of leftovers. I leave them out there, And of course, a lot of raccoons come out there. And I have one of those have-a-heart traps, where they go. The door slams behind them. It's got a little pedal about middle way, and they step on that pedal. Of course, that flips that door down. Well, over the years, I've caught many raccoons and opossums and foxes in there, and I always turn them loose because I don't need them and I don't want them, and no need to kill them. And so most of them have got smart now and won't go in it. They've learned after several times, especially the foxes. That I've caught them. I caught the male and the female on 2 occasions, and I let them go. But now they're really hard to catch. What they'll do is try to fish with their feet through the wire and pull things out there to eat until they wear it out, get all the food out. They won't go in the door. But anyway, one afternoon, it was actually midday. My wife and I were going somewhere, and I went out the back door and I walked over toward that feeding station to see if anything was in the trap. And I heard that popping noise going on. I said, "Oh my God, they're here behind my house!" And I didn't see them, but I could hear them pop, and they're moving away. And one day, I was going to build a little lean-to blind to shoot deer. There was plenty of deer back there at the time, and so I had laid up a top frame, and I was leaning up logs that I found laying around in the limbs up along one side. And I quit because I said, well, I picked up all the limbs I can find, so I'm going to have to move and find some more logs. But I said I'll just do it tomorrow, and I came on home. Well, 2 or 3 days went by before I went back over, and when I did, the logs were all thrown down on the ground except for three. There was three in one corner and one about 2 foot away. And so I thought 1 and 3, wonder why that is, But I put my logs all back up again. I figured some rascal came by and knocked them down. And so I put all the logs back up there. And a couple of days later, I went back out there, and they're all on the ground again except 3 and 1. They always left 3 together and 1 off to the side. So I think they were telling me it's 3 of them and 1 of me. I'm not sure what that meant, but it was always the same. But anyway, I fed them a lot of corn and apples and sweet potatoes and things like that. But I realized that, in the fall, they go away in the wintertime, and I'm not sure where they're going, if they're going south or east or west. But the Neuse River runs within a quarter of a mile of my house, and it actually makes a big loop around my house. And they tend to stay along waterways, and there's a little creek called Buffalo Creek, and they also you like to use that creek. I've caught a lot of catfish and things out of there in a fish trap, and so apparently they feed out of there. There's a lot of crawfish in there, turtles and things like that. So I think they like to feed along those streams and riverbanks. But that was my affirmation of it. And then they disappeared for about 3 or 4 months, and then they came back, and I could see where they laid down out there in the pine straw and under the pines, and so I assumed they were. I said, well, it's either deer laying here or it's Bigfoot, but I never caught them laying down. They were always on the move when I saw them around. There's about 500 acres of wooded area behind me that trail runs through, and so I was always an outdoor guy and loved hiking and wandering through the woods and that kind of thing, and looking for bow wood, and sometimes I'd cut a walking stick with some of the senior people at church and all that. But anyway, I would encounter those guys occasionally out there, and sometimes not in person, but I would hear them and hear their popping noises and things like that. The only voice I heard was that first time where the big guy, the daddy guy, was talking to somebody. I don't know if he was talking to me or talking to his cohorts or what. But they tolerated me, and I never took a gun. I never tried to shoot them or anything like that. And so they know what a gun is, I'm sure, and I'm sure they've been persecuted. But the reason they got there, I think, is because across the highway from me, a road runs through there called Buffalo Road. Well, on Buffalo Road, they took out about 300 acres of forest there, and I mean, they got everything. They chipped it. They cut all the pines, and they cut all the oaks, and then they chipped the maples and sweet gums and all that, in the chips. So they got all the wood out of there. And I think they displaced those guys because this land went right up to the river, not up to the river exactly, but about 50 feet to the river, because there's a safe passage or zoning area that you can't penetrate to the river, and that's for conservation. But I didn't see those guys until after they clear cut all that land. So I got to thinking, well, they probably got displaced over here. But after a couple of years, all that stuff grew up, head high with new saplings and all kinds of plants. And I'm sure they feasted on those plants and moved back over there. And one afternoon, me and the wife was coming home on Buffalo Road, and I looked over to the left where the clear cut was, but it wasn't. That was the first year after it started growing back. And one of those guys, and I think it was the juvenile one, but he was walking about 100 yards of the highway, and he was walking parallel to the highway, was coming out to a bean field. And I told my wife, I said, that sucker's going out of that bean field, I believe. But he was looking down when he was stumped over, you know how they walk. And but he was walking slow. He wasn't walking fast. It looked like he was looking on the ground, you know, whatever. But he may not have been. Maybe that was his natural sense. And that was, let's see, I think that was the last one I saw. And I think they moved back across there. And there's a park service here, and it's a state employee type thing where they cut the grass along the high school here. And there's a swimplex down there, and so they keep those grounds and two or three ball fields and pickleball courts and all that. And there's about 3 or 4 guys that have a shack down there where they keep their equipment, and they keep the grounds mowed and so forth. But anyway, they know about Bigfoot because they would ever tell me, and I told the game and fish about it, and they just laughed, you know. And I don't think they believe me either. And my neighbors don't believe me. They think I'm lying, just making this stuff up. But I swear to God in heaven, if there's one up there, he knows what I saw, and he and I know they are living beings. And I remember the first time I saw all three together, I felt like I was in Jurassic Park. I said, you know, this can't be real. But it was real, and it did happen. And they interacted with me, not in a negative way, but I would say a cautionary way. They didn't try to attack me, but they stayed away. The young one that run me that day, I don't think he meant to catch me. I think he meant to. There's some kind of low frequency sound wave they give out that armies even experimented with it that makes you sick and dizzy and you know, kind of disables you for a while. And lions do that, and also elephants give out a sound that is not audible to the human ear, but it definitely is audible to their species, you know.
Yeah, well, I believe you, Larry. I just want you to know that I believe you, and you're on the right show for sharing your experience. I wanted to ask, what was the average height of these Sasquatch that you saw, these Bigfoot?
They were not all that tall. I would say I'm right at 6 foot, 5'11" and a half. So I would say they were between 6 and 7 foot as an average. It seemed like the big guy was a little taller. And one night I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a full moon, and I walked here to the kitchen. I didn't turn the lights on, and because it was so light outside. And I looked out the window, and there's old Big Daddy standing over there. There's a big fig bush out there, and he was standing behind my fig bush. Well, we met eye to eye, and he just all he did is turned around and walked right out into the shadows, back into the woods out there. And he was some ugly looking, mean looking rascal. But they never tried to break in my house or bother anything here. And I was thinking, they're good protection. If I could tame them, nobody'd ever break in my house.
Yeah, for sure.
We never got to that point. They tolerated me and I them. I never tried to harm them. And I fed them, and I'm sure they must realize, there was some good out of the situation. But I haven't seen in the last 6 months. That doesn't mean they don't come across the road back over and visit, especially right now because the acorns are falling, and even the deer stopped coming out and getting corn because they're eating acorns. If they get acorns, they rather have them than corn. But I still keep corn out there, but it is sparingly used by them right now. But 6 months ago, they'd gobble up 50 pounds, in 2 nights. But anyway, over the years, I've taken 1 or 2 deer a year out of there just for food, and I don't kill more than that because I don't need to waste them. And they come in my yard, 7, 8, 9, 10 at a time, and feed in the yard here around that feeding area. And I keep a feeder out there too, full of corn, and it's one of those plastic square-looking jobs where you tie to the tree. and they're using that right now. But I put out 50 pounds 2 days ago, and they barely touched it. But and I put a salt block out there. I always keep a salt block out there, and not a quote block, but it's a salt rock. It's a rock. They love that rock better than the square kind that's made out of molasses and ground corn and stuff. But anyway, Bigfoot does exist, and I think they're around these suburban areas. People don't even realize it. They come up in the yards at night and rummage through the garbage pails and all those dumpsters, that are around commercial buildings. I think they get molested by Bigfoot. So
that's
they're getting
very
food, huh?
very interesting. Yeah, very interesting stuff right there. What was your initial feeling when you first saw this creature? What was your initial feeling?
I couldn't believe it. I was really scared, but I was curious too. I thought that the female was watching me that day. The first time I saw a grown Bigfoot, she was real tall and lanky, and but she was not, and she wasn't fat. She was rather slim. And I thought maybe, at first that she was trying to ambush me, but she wasn't, because she'd probably been watching me for a good while, cutting those reeds and wondering what the heck I was doing. But and my movements, and I'm sure that nobody's ever done that to her. Try to wave at her and say, "Hey, I was going to do that," and see if she'd wave back. And then I motioned for her to come on over, which she didn't do that either. And then I kind of got a little scared. I thought, well, maybe I pissed her off, and I better get out of here. And so I did. And the second time the one I saw was the younger one I told you about. It was on the other side of the creek, was running in an open meadow-like area, and he'd been in there eating those weeds or picking those succulent weeds that was growing there out. And he ran away by himself and up a hill and out of sight. And I never did see Mama or Papa, but I assumed that they must be close by, and they sent him out of there. But it may not. He may have been wandering around on his own. I didn't see Mom and Daddy, but I wasn't going to go down there and see if they're in that creek bottom either. But and then the third time I saw them together was all three on the hill that day, and I heard that big guy talking, and it's just like you see in the movies. It sounded just like, got a deep baritone voice, and you can't understand what they're saying because it doesn't make any sense. But it's basically a but anyway, that's the only noise I ever heard them make. And then I saw the one on the other side of the road there walking up the clear cut one day. And I'd see their footprints around. They hung around my fig bush at night, looking in my house. They wore out the ground in a round circle there where they've been standing, watching peeking in the air, looking at the TV or looking at us or whatever. But they are around. They're very sneaky. You won't get to see them, and unless you were thinking they were there and were looking for them, you wouldn't see them anyway, because they blend right in. Now, a couple of times I thought I saw them disappear. What they do is the colors will come all in their fur, as the sun's shining on it, and then they'll just kind of fade out. Just like they disappeared. And I don't know if that is a real disappearance or just a camouflage disappearance because of their fur. But they're brown, kind of dark brown. And they got some. The younger ones have chestnut hair on their chest, and the big daddy, of course, he's a dark guy all over. His face is rather open. I see his mouth and all that, and he's got a bushy head. I don't know if they ever cut their hair or how they get rid of their hair, but he didn't have a lot of hair on his head. but the female seemed like she had a little more hair on her head. But they had about maybe 2 or 3 inch hair all over their body, and I didn't see any distinguishing markings other than their the color of their hair, and sometimes they can look a little bit reddish depending on the lighting conditions and so forth. Reddish dark, not real red, but just a tinge of reddish look to their fur.
Yeah, for sure. Larry, what do you think these creatures are? What do you think this Bigfoot creature is?
Well,
in your opinion,
in the beginning, I thought they were put here by aliens, and they had some kind of a job they were doing here. And then after a while, I got to thinking, well, maybe they're just. I was reading information about them, and then people thinking they've been here since time immemorial, and that people have been enduring or meeting these guys, especially the Indians, for many, many years. I think they are a rare species. I think they're very limited, and I think they are social. They stay in groups, family groups, if possible, and they do some infighting for reproduction and things like that. Always at night. They're mostly nocturnal, but however, you can see them in the daytime occasionally. So they're not forced by nature to be nocturnal. So they can be both. But they're real hard to see unless you are knowing they're over there and you are looking explicitly for a Bigfoot. You won't ever see him. I mean, they can go into a patch of woods and disappear. And so to me, in the beginning, I couldn't believe I saw it myself. I had to think about it every several days. Did I really see all that? And but it's a reality, and they leave tracks. I've seen their tracks in my backyard. In fact, my sister and her husband came over one day, and I was telling them that story, and they were laughing, and I could tell they were thinking, "Oh, Honeycutt's going around the bend." But I took him outside. I said, "Well, look at these damn tracks," and he started taking pictures of them. But then
do you have any pictures or evidence of stuff that you've seen? Anything you could share?
I never took a camera with me.
Oh, that'd be amazing if you could capture that.
They don't like for you to point stuff at them, so I understood, and it pisses them off. But I think they realize that objects in your hand may be dangerous to them, and so I don't know how smart they are. They're cunning in an animal one type way. I don't know how smart they are. I mean, if they wanted to learn how to start fires, they see us doing it. I mean, they could copy that. But only one time I found fire in the woods and a fire. But I think kids did that from the high school. So I don't think they light fires. They may, but I don't think so. But there's only two ways they could be: is they've been here a long time, or two, they're being brought in by the aliens and they have a purpose. I'm not sure what it is, but one of the two is probable.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah,
I know what UFOs sound like, or saucers when they come low over your house. I've had them come. They sound like a damn washing machine out of balance. Whoom, 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 whoom. And so they, when I was in North Florida.
Did you say you had a UFO experience?
Oh yeah.
Can you share that experience with us, please?
Yeah, when I was living in Lake City, Florida, I was living between Lake City and White Springs, off of Highway 41. And I had dug a fish pond in my yard. It was like maybe less than a quarter of an acre and maybe about 10 foot deep in the center. But I stocked it with fish, and I had some nice tilapia in there, 2 and 3, 4 pound tilapia that I could catch. What I'd do is I'd bait them with oatmeal and stuff like that and get them, close by. Then I'd put a little tiny piece of worm on the hook and they eat that too. And I'd go out and catch one fish and have fish for 2 or 3 days. But anyway, one night I heard something splashing around in the pond out there. So I walked out there and I got almost to the pond and this guy, he was growled at me, snarled at me, and I said, "Oh hell, I got the wrong guy. I thought it was raccoons." So I turned around and went back in the house. but I didn't see him clearly. All I saw was his shadow. I mean, it looked like a shadow because there wasn't that much moon out that night. But he tolerated me getting within 10 yards of him before he threatened me, yelled at me, screamed at me, or what do you want to call. And it was enough to turn me around. I damn sure wasn't going to go any closer. I got out of there and got back in the house. Well, that was one
Wow. And
experience.
what do you think that was? What do you think
Well,
that was?
it was a Bigfoot.
That
It was definitely
okay,
a
that was a
Bigfoot in there.
Bigfoot. Wow.
Well, one of the neighbors saw one, and he asked me. He said, "You know any real tall guy that walks around here at night?" And I said, "Yeah, Bigfoot." And he didn't want to believe that. He said, "No, I mean, I'm serious. I mean," I said, "Well, hell yeah, I'm telling you the truth. Bigfoot walks through that corridor. There was a corridor there, and about 2 miles between subdivisions of a corridor of woods that went into a swamp, and they used that all the time." And one day, my neighbor's dog, he was a black lab. He used to go with me because I'd take him to the woods and stuff, and he'd left to follow me. He'd jump over the fence just to get with me and go to the woods. One day he was chasing something down there in that swamp, and he ran it for a good ways, and then he didn't, they don't want tree. But he came back, and I could hear the splashing. It sounded like he was running he could have been running a deer, but I didn't see what he was running. But anyway, there in that swamp, there were some giant tupelo trees and gum trees and things like that. So I thought that was a good place for one to hide out, sleep in one of them big gum hollows. But I didn't see him
definitely. Very
personally.
interesting. Yeah.
I didn't see that one personally, but he was in my yard one night because, and he also used to steal my chickens. And he would shut the door back. He'd get one or two chickens at a time and shut the door back. He was smart enough to do that. And either that or I had a human chicken thief. But I lost all my chickens 2 or 3 at a time, over a period of about a month. And so I gave up the chicken business after that. And but anyway, they exist and they are around, and especially around waterways and swamps and streams and rivers. And if you are living, and they make these subdivisions today right up against rivers and creeks and stuff, and they travel those creeks and rivers, and they'll pass by your yard, but you won't ever see them. And the average person, and even in the daytime, is not looking for them. They're preoccupied with their things in life. They don't see anything. But if you're outdoors and you're looking and you're wary of them, possibly being there, you will see their signs, either recent or old, where they've been through your area. So they do exist, and I don't know how they got here or if they're implanted by aliens or how, but they damn sure are here. And
Yeah, very
my
interesting
neighbors have a
stuff.
hard time
Very
believing this.
interesting. Yeah.
Huh?
Very interesting, definitely. I do agree with you. I don't know how they got here or what they might be, but yeah, it's very interesting to think about for sure.
They're here. And I was a skeptical kind of guy. You couldn't have told me before 1978. You told me something like that, I would think you're a liar and just a crazy guy. But I saw it myself, and now I know how you feel when you try to relate that story to someone else because they don't believe it either.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Very interesting, man. You mentioned also earlier, you said, did you encounter a UFO experience that you might want to share with us in the audience?
Yeah. One night, my wife, and she's standing here in the kitchen with me, were in bed about 4 o'clock, and we both woke up at the same time. And I heard this noise going boom, 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 and it gradually went out of sight. It went away, and the sound got lower and lower and lower till it disappeared. And I said, "Honey, go outside and see what that is." She said, "You go see." But anyway, we both woke up at the same time. We don't know why. We didn't look for marks on us or anything. But a couple of days after that, I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I heard this noise in my bathroom. We had a bathroom separate for our bedroom, and the door was closed, but it sounded like a phone beeping. You know, like you go beep 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 beep, pushing the buttons. And so I snatched the door open, and it was two balls of light, and they shrank from a baseball size down to a golf ball size, and they dashed behind the towel cabinet. And so I went back there and moved the towel cabinet around to see if there was anything back there. And I assumed they went through the cracks to the outside, but I don't know if that was a ghost or if that was some of Bigfoot's doings or what. I'm not Bigfoot, but aliens. I don't know what it was, but I know I heard that boom, 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 boom sound on several occasions, and we had Bigfoots in that area. I saw their signs, saw their footprints, and saw one in my pond. And the neighbor saw one crossing his field between the subdivision. It's a narrow, isthmus between the two subdivisions and goes into a swamp. He says that guy was walking across his. He had cameras up out there, and he said the guy was walking by on his property and through his backyard. And he asked me if I knew anybody that was tall like that, and I said, "Yeah, Bigfoot." And he didn't believe it. And you, there's no need to try to convince somebody that there are Bigfoot if they don't believe, because they won't believe it until they see it.
Sure.
They'll think you're full of shit.
And what do you think, in your opinion? What do you think aliens and UFOs? What do you think they are?
The aliens. There have been aliens on Earth for a good while. Eisenhower met with them the first time in a formal way in 1954 at an Air Force base in California. But anyway, yes, we have contracts with them. Another guy wrote a book I read about, and he was a weather station manager and put up balloons every day to check the winds and all that. But he said there was a base in the mountains where he was stationed, and they used to come down and bring their kids, and they always had a ray gun with them. And he said they didn't mind using it. The ladies were just as tough as the men, and they didn't want you to ask them any questions, and they didn't ask you any, but they would stand about 20 yards from you and observe what you were doing. But he said the Air Force had fixed up a base for them up in the top of the mountains, and they came and went as they wanted to, and had a landing pad and all that. And even we have I saw it today for the first time. Elon Musk has designed an anti-gravity airplane that's high tech and has weapons that no one has ever used before, like high-powered lasers and things like that, as well as munitions if you want to put them on there. But for a long time, people were seeing these triangles in the sky and claiming it was UFOs. Well, hell, it was us, and they just finally brought that out today. But we have now conquered anti-gravity, and I know dang well we got up in aliens. We've had several aliens in captivity. I was reading a book about this one alien that he had a captain, a medical doctor that looked after him, and no one else was allowed inside his cage or pen or whatever. But he was in a caged area. But his name was J-Rod, and J-Rod didn't talk too much. But if you engaged him about his philosophy, he would tell you. He said the problem with Earth is a dogma, and all this religious people, like right now, the Jews are fighting what's the religious faction over there outside of the Jews?
Is it the Pakistan or Iraqis?
What'd you call it, honey? Muslims, yeah. It's the Jews against the Muslims right now. And that's all. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. We all share this earth, and killing each other is
I
going
agree.
nowhere.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, crazy, man, crazy. Very interesting stuff for sure. The things that we do as humans to each other. So, from an outsider's perspective, I'm sure they think we're all crazy.
Yeah. Now we've got aliens that are visiting this earth They do. Well, they have people within the Air Force and NASA who interact with them and know where they're coming from and all that, and they do share some knowledge, but they're pretty tight-lipped about it because they don't want, just like you had something special for yourself, you don't want to give it away to anybody else, you know.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Then everybody on Earth will eventually get it. But we do have some super technology going on right now, and it's anti-gravity. You can land it on a cowpasser, but it'll go 5 times the speed of sound, and it's a marvelous piece of equipment. And you know, I've lived a long time. I'm 78 years old, but I grew up on a farm here in North Carolina growing tobacco. And boy, the times have changed since I grew up until now. And the technology gap, is getting closer and tighter and tighter and tighter. We're going to have, in the next 100 years, you're going to be some awesome things going on in this country and the world, for that matter.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had a question, Larry. What is some advice you could give somebody that's going out there in the woods and encounters a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch? What's some advice you could give them?
Don't go looking for anything. Pretend like you're walking along, having a good time, and try to look slightly and out of the corner of each eye, and move slowly and quietly, and you'll see more than you'll ever see. You know, it's like the Indian said, "White man, he stumbles around through the forest scaring all the game away." Well, it's kind of like that with everybody, you know, even today, making all this noise, carrying boom boxes with you, and you know, you got to be real quiet and kind of blend in with the environment and not act sneaky like you're trying to catch anything, but you got to act casual, and you might get to see something, especially if you're reading the environment and see if trees are bent and skint and these lap book piles piled up. But the main thing is, if you really want to get them interested, you go out there at night and light a big fire, turn on your boom box. Well, they'll come around and see what the heck you're doing and what you are. And you got to be looking for them, or you won't see them then. They'll stay right outside the fire's glow and watch you, see what you're doing. But they're here, and they're here wherever food is available. Now, here in the South, where I'm at, during the summertime, they got access to sweet corn, sweet potatoes, squash, apples, carrots, all kinds of things like that, and soybeans. They eat a lot of soybeans. But I think basically they're vegetarians. They got a vegetarian mouth and they got round, square teeth like a horse. So I think they eat a lot of vegetarian matter. However, they will eat deer. I mean, I've seen here where several deer skeletons, and I don't think they died of old age. I think they were killed. And I picked up the racks of 2 bucks that were killed and brought them back. Some could have been shot and ran off and died. But I used to have 15 deer in my yard every afternoon, and now I got 3. So something happened to those deer, and it happened during the times that Bigfoot lived back here. And they, especially the young ones, they would prey on the young ones real bad. And, so they didn't have any reproduction going on for a while. But I think they moved back across the highway around the Neuse River low grounds, and they probably have a den back there or a shack or something that they're living in. And I've seen the guys who work for the Parks Association here running around on their John Deere carts. One day they look. I could see the terror in their eyes, and they were going off the path and going up alongside the woods, and I knew that what they were doing, but they wouldn't tell me nothing. And you could, if you went downtown and told the sheriff's department Bigfoot lived out here, they'd laugh you out of the building, But I think there's some governmental agencies you could probably call and tell them you got a family of Bigfoot living, and they may even do something to prevent people developing the land. I don't know if they would or not. So it's different states have different rules and different ideas. But and a lot of people still don't believe that Bigfoot exists, but they certainly do. And I
Oh
would have
yeah,
told
for
you
sure.
25 years ago that they didn't exist, but I know now because I've seen them, I've interacted with them, and I know they exist. They would never let me
For
get too
sure.
close to them. 50 yards is about the right distance before they move off, And it
Yeah.
depends on what you're doing. If you act like you're stalking them, well, then they'll move quicker and faster. But by and large, they have become accustomed to people to some degree around these what I call urban areas, and it just so happens that my subdivision is right near the river, 1/4 of a mile, to the river. And there's a few people living back there, but they probably know things that they don't say and talk about. But I moseyed back there and try to talk to them people, but they're real closed knit. They don't want you back there on their private road. But so I don't go back there and bother them anymore. But anyway, it's hard to find somebody that's open minded and open mouth that'll tell you anything that you want to hear. They keep it secret, like guarded, because the people will criticize you terribly if you come out in the open, and tell people this and that and the other, because there's a lot of skeptics out there still.
Yeah, definitely. And you're definitely on the right show, Larry. Is there any final thoughts or any final words you might want to share here on the show for the audience?
Yeah, if anybody out there is interested in Bigfoot, you don't have to do anything special, but you need to be around water. You need to be around water, lakes, rivers, ponds. A lot of these little streams, have fish, and this one out here does. I've caught them in fish traps, 6 or 7 inch long catfish and sunfish and things like that. Well, they eat the crawfish and they eat the turtles, and I'm sure they catch a few of those fish. They go to the areas where the water is shallow, runs over rocks, so shallow, and I think they're able to catch a few there. But and there's all kinds of other stuff around, snakes and snails and frogs and you name it. So they do like waterways, and they like a little open areas where it grows up in weeds, especially succulent weeds, that have a lot of moisture and it's easy to consume. And they'll eat crops, they'll eat corn, they'll eat wheat, and they'll eat soybeans and sweet potatoes and things like that, which are grown around here. But they move around, I think, along with the food supply wherever and they know the lay of the land probably 2 or 3, 4 states away, and they know where things are. At certain times of the year, they'll move out there and get it. But they're smart in that manner, in a wilderness way. But I don't know how how smart they are as far as mentally thinking about mechanics of life. I think they're driven by necessity.
Yeah, for sure. Larry, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with me and the audience. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I appreciate you and your time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Okay, good night.
Thank you for watching the show, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Larry and his Bigfoot experiences. And remember to share the show, because that's the only way that this podcast will grow. Make sure to give the show a 5-star rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you guys might be listening to the show. And if anyone out there listening that wants to share an experience and come on the show, please reach out to me, because I'd love to hear from you and have you on the show. Until next time, everyone, stay safe, stay blessed, and remember to innovate honesty and always illuminate the truth. Bye.